Hey y'all. Live from Master Sleep, period. Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Ginger Spice Show. It is your hostess with the mostest, your not so typical school psychologist, Ginger. Y'all, all of the love that I've gotten so far since sharing my previous video has been overwhelming. And I love y'all so much. I really do. Thank you so much for affirming me in the choice that I've made. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with me. For those of you who have felt like similar to what I was feeling, or even those of you who are like, I'm thinking about coming into the field, and the message that you're sharing is something that I felt, whether on internship or even just from the stories that you've heard. I don't say any of this to scare you all. I say this just sharing my truth and sharing my reality. And if it resonates with you, or if you feel like you want to just dialogue about what it was that I shared, feel free to DM me on Instagram. Feel free again to start the conversation in the comments, because this is something that needs to be talked about. But I'm not gonna hold y'all. I know why y'all here. You want to know more about being a school psychologist that's working on a contractual basis. So contracting as a school psychologist. I tried it and I'm gonna rate it 1 through 10. Just kidding, I am not on my keep leave. But I am just gonna give y'all 3 pros and 3 cons about being a school psychologist or working on a contractual basis. So I'm gonna start with the pros, right? Why does it make sense to become a school psychologist that is contracting? Well, number one, there's endless money to be made. So the company that I was working with, you essentially could pick how many cases you wanted to be assigned for the specific month, and you could pick as many as you want. And I'm not gonna tell you the dollar amount that they were giving, but baby, in comparison to what the people at the schools was paying, you could make like a month's worth of your salary back in just doing a couple of cases. So endless amount of money. It's really up to how many cases you think that you can take on as a professional, and make sure that you're completing these cases accurately and to the T of what the companies are asking for, but endless amounts of money. Number 2, there's time freedom, right? So you're not trapped to one school. At least, again, this is from my experience with the one contracting company that I worked with. You essentially get the cases, you can do the background information from home, you can gather all of the information that you need, and then you really just go into the schools to do the observation and then to test the kid. And I was working with a company that required a DC certification, and because of that, the schools that I was working with were in DC. So you really have time freedom of, you pick and choose the days that you want to go into the schools, that you want to work with the kids that you want to test, and then all else is fair game of how you spend your time. And then I'd say the last pro is that you can choose essentially between testing or therapy. So again, the company that I was working with, or let's say counseling, the company that I was working with, they had an assessment caseload, as well as you could take on a therapy or counseling caseload as well. So essentially you really get to choose, whereas in some school districts, like the one that I just left, I had to have a caseload of direct service kiddos. So overall, I think those were my 3 biggest like pros that was just like, yeah, this makes sense to do, because there's endless money, you have time freedom, and then you get to really pick and choose how you practice as a contracting school psychologist. But the cons, and I feel like for me, the cons kind of outweighed the pros. I'm not gonna share my specific experience as yet, and maybe one day I will, about like what it was that I experienced while I was contracting. And again, it's nothing like bad or otherworldly, it kind of is just something that didn't necessarily align with the way that I practice school psychology. But overall, the 3 cons to being a contracted school psychologist from my point of view are: 1, not working in the school, right? So from my experience of being in the schools, you kind of just get more ingrained and enmeshed in the school community. So you become a part of that school, you know the students, you know the stories of the students and their parents and that kind of stuff. And I feel like on the contracting side, you're only coming in to just do the testing. So any information that you get outside of that is really just through parent interviews, teacher interviews, and you don't really know the real tea that you can get when you're in a school building, when you know who all the players are. And I feel like that is essentially my second con, is that you don't know who the heavy hitters are when you are working as a contract school psychologist. So what that means to me is when I'm in a school, I know if I have a student come up, I can go to the principal, I can go to the lunch lady, I can go to the nurse and ask the kinds of pressing questions that maybe you won't get as an outsider of the building. And again, for some of you that may not matter, you might just like to get whatever information is shared and then go ahead, test and write the report. But for me, I like to dig. I need to know everything, down to the birth history, the time, like I need to know everything so that I can paint a full picture about the baby that I'm testing. But again, whose opinion is this? Mine. So always take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because my experience is always going to be different than yours. And lastly, I'd always say that this con is probably the biggest for me, is that you're at the beck and call of whoever you're in contact with at that school. So again, just like being in a school, right? You can walk to a teacher's office, you can call the parent from the school line and they're going to answer. I feel like I experienced, like the school that I was working with, they sent me the wrong information for, like the wrong parent information for a kid, had the kid's wrong birthday. Like there were just so many minuscule things that were wrong that could ultimately end up messing up the data that you get from, right, the test that you're doing. So if you put in the wrong birth date for a kid on an IQ test, the scores are going to be skewed depending on how wrong the birthday is. So it's really, I think for me, realizing that you don't necessarily always have access to the things that you may have access to in the schools. So like I didn't have access to like their Power School or their Maryland Online, like things like that, to be able to like go in and find the things that I need that maybe a sped chair may not know what I'm looking for, or they find something and it's not exactly what you're looking for because you can't do your own deep digging and data diving. So I'd say those are my top 3 pros, top 3 cons. Again, if y'all want to know like my specific experience with contracting, let me know and we could talk about it. It wasn't like all bad, and I won't say it was all good. I kind of lived somewhere in the middle of these pros and cons, and ultimately realizing like if I'm not in a school building, I don't feel fulfilled in this work. And again, that's just me. I know myself from everything that I've shared with you all. I hope that you are beginning to ask yourself the tough questions about what you want out of this field so that you can get the most and make the most out of it. But overall, contracting is cool for some people. Some people love it, right? They love being able to just make the money, go home, not have to worry about everyone's personalities in the school building. You kind of just work with one person, work with the kid, share your report, and then you're done. Versus there's me, who's just like, I just prefer a little bit more of that individual experience with kids and just getting to know them more than just the assessment process. So with that being said, that is all that I have for you today. Again, if there are any questions that you all have that you want me to answer, feel free to drop them in the comments. But if there is nothing else, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell, hit the button. I know you love it here. I know you miss me. I know you want more. So I know that you know that when you hit that button. I will see you all next week. I hope that you all have a great week. I hope that this video gave you some of the answers that you were looking for. And again, if not, drop it in the comment and we'll talk about it. See you guys soon.